What if I told you that ancient humans were taking pregnancy tests thousands of years before any pharmacy existed? And not just guessing, but actually getting it right. We're talking about civilizations that had no microscopes, no hormones knowledge, no medical textbooks. Yet they figured out ways to detect pregnancy, protect their unborn children, and survive childbirth. Some of their methods were surprisingly smart. Some were strange, and some were just heartbreaking. Today, we're going back, way back, to look at how ancient humans cared for their unborn children. From Egyptian urine tests that actually worked, to Ice Age figurines passed down through generations like survival guides, to a Bronze Age woman found frozen in time during a birth that went terribly wrong. This is the story of pregnancy before modern medicine. And honestly, it's one of the most human stories you'll ever hear. Let's get into it. Let's start with something that sounds completely ridiculous until you find out it actually works. Ancient Egyptians around 1350 BC had a pregnancy test written down in something called the Berlin Papyrus. Here's what it said. A woman should urinate on 2 separate containers, one with wheat seeds, one with barley seeds, for several days in a row. If the seeds sprouted, she was pregnant. If barley germinated first, it meant she was carrying a boy. If wheat sprouted, it was a girl. Now, at first glance, that sounds like complete nonsense. But here's the part that should genuinely surprise you. In 1963, researchers actually tested this method under controlled laboratory conditions. And it was accurate roughly 70% of the time when detecting pregnancy. Why? Because the urine of a pregnant woman contains elevated levels of estrogen. And those estrogens genuinely do stimulate seed germination. The Egyptians had absolutely no concept of hormones. They didn't know what estrogen was. They didn't understand why it worked. But somehow, through observation and trial and error over generations, they accidentally created a real biological test, a bioassay, that predated modern pregnancy tests by more than 3,000 years. That is remarkable. The gender prediction part, that didn't hold up in the tests. But just the fact that the pregnancy detection part worked at a 70% accuracy rate is extraordinary. Now, not every ancient pregnancy test was as scientifically grounded. Another Egyptian method took a very different approach. This one involved inserting a clove of garlic into the vagina before sleeping. The idea was that if you woke up the next morning with garlic-scented breath, it was a good sign for the pregnancy. If there was no garlic smell, it boded poorly. The reasoning behind it was that a healthy, open womb would allow the properties of the garlic to travel upward through the body overnight. A blocked or unhealthy womb would stop that from happening. Now, medically, that doesn't hold up. Garlic doesn't actually travel through the body that way. But what this tells us is something important. These weren't random superstitions. These were people actively trying to understand what was happening inside the body, trying to build a system of knowledge with the tools they had. That curiosity, that drive to figure things out, that's deeply human. Here's something most people don't know. Human birth is genuinely one of the most difficult and dangerous births in the entire animal kingdom. And it's because of how we walk. When humans evolved to walk upright on 2 legs, the shape of the pelvis changed significantly. And that created a birth canal with a twisted, narrow shape. This produces something unique to humans, a rotational birth pattern. The baby has to turn and rotate as it moves through the birth canal. And here's the key detail. Because of this rotation, human infants are born facing away from the mother. That means a mother cannot safely reach down and guide the baby out herself without risking serious injury to the infant. Compare that to chimpanzees, gorillas, or other primates. Their infants are born facing toward the mother. They can manage the birth alone. Humans almost never could. This is why researchers believe that assisted birth, having another person present to help, may be one of the oldest social behaviors in all of human history. Even Neanderthals, our ancient relatives, would have faced the same challenge. Their birth canals had a similar shape. They would have needed help, too. That means midwifery. the act of helping someone give birth, almost certainly goes back hundreds of thousands of years. Speaking of Neanderthals, they weren't the brutish, solitary creatures that old textbooks used to describe. Research now suggests that Neanderthal communities organized around caring for their most vulnerable members, and that included pregnant women. Healthcare wasn't a modern invention. It wasn't something that only appeared when humans built cities or wrote down laws. It appears to be a fundamental survival strategy that goes back to before our species even existed in its current form. Neanderthal communities looked after each other. They helped each other through illness, injury, and childbirth. That tells us something profound about what it means to be human, or even close to human. Care is ancient. It's built into us at a level that goes far deeper than civilization. Now, let's talk about something that has puzzled scientists for over a century: the Venus figurines. These are small sculptures, typically carved from stone, bone, or ivory, that were made during the Ice Age, roughly 25,000 to 35,000 years ago. They depict women with very large, rounded bodies, wide hips, prominent bellies, heavy breasts. Many of them appear to be pregnant. For a long time, researchers assumed they were fertility symbols or objects of worship. But more recent research points to something much more personal. Many of these figurines show significant wear. They were handled constantly over long periods of time. Some researchers believe they were heirlooms, passed from mother to daughter across generations. When a young woman entered puberty or became pregnant for the first time, she may have been given one of these figurines. The idea behind it was that the figurine represented the kind of body a woman needed to survive pregnancy and childbirth. Enough body mass, enough strength, enough fat reserves. During the Ice Age, when food was scarce and winter was brutal, being too thin during pregnancy could be a death sentence. The figurine wasn't just a charm, it was a visual message passed down through generations. This is what healthy looks like. This is what survival looks like. Carry this and carry it with you. That is a deeply moving idea. Here's something that might genuinely surprise you. There have been traditional societies, particularly hunter-gatherer communities, that did not keep or breed livestock, where people did not connect sex and pregnancy at all. Without animals to observe, without seeing other creatures mate and then give birth months later, the connection wasn't obvious. Think about it. 9 months is a long time. There are many events between the moment of conception and the moment of birth. In some of these communities, pregnancy may have seemed like something that simply happened, not something caused by a specific act. A pregnant woman in such a society might genuinely not know what was growing inside her body. She might not understand what the changes meant or where they came from. It's a reminder of how much of what we consider basic knowledge was actually hard-won over thousands of years of observation and communication. By the time we get to ancient Rome, pregnancy advice had become very detailed. A Roman physician named Soranus wrote extensively about what pregnant women should and should not do. His list of things to avoid during pregnancy included strong emotions, vigorous movement, jumping and dancing, sex, coughing, and sneezing. Yes, sneezing was considered a potential cause of miscarriage. He also had very specific dietary rules. Pregnant women were told to avoid garlic, onions, leeks, and preserved meats or fish, all described as too pungent for a developing pregnancy. He even warned against bathing during the first 7 days of pregnancy. His belief was that water would weaken the delicate structure of the early embryo. Now, some of this is clearly wrong, but some of it, like avoiding excessive physical strain or being cautious about certain foods, actually overlaps with modern recommendations in interesting ways. Soranus was working with the knowledge available to him, and he was genuinely trying to protect women and their pregnancies. Here's something that might seem counterintuitive at first. Many ancient agricultural societies actually restricted food for pregnant women, not out of neglect, but out of fear. A cross-cultural study found that many societies had specific food taboos during pregnancy that focused on preventing the baby from growing too large. High-protein foods, calorie-dense foods. These were sometimes restricted or discouraged. The reason was very practical. A baby that grew too large could not pass through the birth canal safely. Before modern medicine, obstructed labor was one of the leading causes of death for both mother and child. So restricting food during pregnancy, in this context, wasn't cruelty. It was a survival strategy based on painful, accumulated experience. In Spain, archaeologists made a discovery that is both scientifically significant and genuinely heartbreaking. They found the burial of a young woman, approximately 25 to 26 years old, dating to between 1,500 and 1,000 BC. Her fetus, at 37 to 39 weeks of gestation, was still inside her, positioned crosswise. Part of the infant's right arm had already emerged from the uterus. She died during childbirth. The baby was in the wrong position and could not be delivered safely. This is considered the oldest documented case of obstructed labor in the entire archaeological record. She was preserved in that moment for 3,000 years. It's a reminder that the risks of pregnancy and childbirth that we can now manage with modern medicine were, for most of human history, a very real and very common source of tragedy. Finally, let's talk about something that looks strange on the surface, but becomes deeply moving once you understand it. In Chaprabad, Iran, archaeologists found two extraordinarily well-preserved fetal burials dating to around 4,500 BC. The infants had been buried inside ceramic vessels, ordinary pots that had previously been used for everyday domestic activities, cooking, storage. At first glance, it might seem like a casual or careless way to bury a child, but it wasn't. The ceramic vessels actually helped protect the fragile infant bones from decomposing. The ancient Near Eastern practice of jar burial was, in many cases, a deliberate act of preservation. These parents, or this community, chose to place these infants inside something familiar, something from the home, something that had been part of daily life. It was a way of keeping them close, of wrapping them in something domestic and safe, even in death. What looks to modern eyes like an afterthought was actually a carefully considered act of care and love. Across thousands of years and dozens of cultures, one thing stays completely consistent. People cared. They tried to protect their pregnancies. They helped each other through childbirth. They mourned their losses. They passed down knowledge to the next generation. The methods changed. The understanding of biology changed. But the love behind all of it never did. If you found this as fascinating as I did, go ahead and hit the like button. It genuinely helps this kind of content reach more people. And drop a comment below. Which of these facts surprised you the most? I'd love to know if it was the wheat and barley test, the Ice Age figurines, or that Bronze Age burial. Subscribe if you want more videos that dig into history in this kind of detail. There are stories buried in the ancient world that most people never hear, and we're going to keep telling them. Thanks for watching.